Good evening, everyone. This is Old School from WhatTheBuck.net with the post-Steelers game wrap-up video. This was the coming back to earth segment of the Buccaneer season thus far, with us getting our butts handed to us 38-13. And really not a whole lot to say about this game that can't be summarized in a ton of colloquialisms. We did not get any of the bounces to bounce our way. And a lot of people, I think, here locally have gone the lazy route and said this is just the real Buccaneers. This is what they expected us to be. This is like the Giants and the Jets game of last year, and really not doing any research. And we'll have another video dissecting the differences between what happened against Pittsburgh this week and what happened last year against the Giants and the Jets. But having watched this game now a third time and gone back and looked at what happened with the Giants and the Jets last year, they were very, very different things that happened. Now, we were fortunate enough to have Styles G. White on the show with us tonight on What the Buck, and what I like to see is that the attitude is not what we saw after the Giants and Jets last year. Now, statistically, this game wasn't nearly as lopsided as the score would indicate. It was a game that was really kind of predicated on a couple of big plays. And sometimes you make those plays, and sometimes you don't. And this week, it was not our time to make the plays, whether it was the Cody Grimm great spectator seat for the touchdown to Mike Wallace, where he had fine position but never looked back to find the ball, allowed a touchdown pass after a 2-yard drive. Or Aqib Talib in perfect position, bouncing the interception off of his hands into the waiting hands of, again, Mike Wallace for yet another 2-yard scoring drive. If you compound that with a couple of other miscues, the Mike Williams fumble, the Sammy Strouder naked screen, tip pass, returned for 79 yards, I believe, by a defensive lineman, something our cornerback Rondé Barber was incapable of doing earlier in the year. And it makes for tough sledding. You can't go behind on a team like the Steelers because they're certainly going to grind it out. They're going to put their foot right in your throats, which is exactly what you'd expect a team to do. And as soon as they get a lead like that, that defense for the Steelers can start to really kind of mix things up. Dick LeBeau can start throwing some blitzes at you, and that's when things get really ugly. And when you look at what happened on the lines, aside from the running game, which was non-existent until Garrett Blunt showed up, the offensive line had a rough day. At the very beginning, before the score was a little bit out of control, I felt like Josh had some time to throw. I thought our offense was moving the ball fairly well. If you look at the drive charts, they're not impressive, certainly, since we got the ball on the turnover early by Aqib Talib. The defense was excited. The probably 40% of the 57,000 people at Raymond James Stadium were rooting for the Buccaneers were very excited. But after getting the turnover at the 31, we couldn't make a first down. We ended up settling for a field goal, which is not what you want to do when you get the ball down there, especially on a quick change. We followed that up with a astonishing 3-play drive. But then we followed up with a 15-play drive. It was actually a pretty doggone good drive. And there were times where the offense looked like it was capable. Now, as, again, the score started to get ugly in the second quarter really was what started this. At the end of the first quarter, Pittsburgh scored their touchdown, and then they went on a run where they scored 3 touchdowns in a row. A 6-play drive, a 2-play drive, and an 11-play drive. And really that took a lot of the wind out of our sails and allowed that Pittsburgh defense to have the confidence to do what it needed to do. And that's when the stats started coming in. This is where the lazier folks are going to go and look at Rashard Mendenhall with his 140-something yards on the ground and Charlie Batch with his over 100 QB rating. And they're not going to look at what happened on the tape, which is really a damn shame because if you look at what happened on tape, again, and those plays happen. I don't want you to think that I'm selling the Steelers short. They won the game. They came in there. They made those plays happen. But if those plays didn't happen, if the plays happened the way that they have happened for us this year and the way we are certainly capable of playing, then those numbers all invert. Charlie Batch doesn't have the yards or the touchdowns. He's got 2 more interceptions to go with the other 2 interceptions they threw. Now, likewise, on our side, we had Josh Freeman get away with 2 passes that should have been picked, one that he overthrew to Mike Williams, and one they tried to hit to the outside after staring down an out route that Ferrier had a chance to jump on. It would have taken it right to the house as well. So those plays certainly happen on both sides of the ball, but I think when you look at the overall body of work, the team did not give up. They continued to fight, and really until the score dictated a one-sided contest, the stats did not start to get out of control. Now, when they did get out of control, it got pretty ugly, and the offensive line gave up a ton of pressures. And this is probably the stat that's most concerning, because if you look at the basic stats, third down, we're 43%, they were 44%. It's pretty even across the board. Our punting game was pathetic, but you're not going to pin everything on the punting game. The average per play really killed us. On the average pass completion was 10.9 yards for the Steelers. I think we had around 5.6 according to the sheet. Running play was a similar double up, 6.3 to like 3.9 or 3.6, and that's with some scrambles by the quarterback giving us a little bit of a bolster. But when you look at the grade out, and we use the data from Pro Football Focus, The offensive line had a rough day with Donald Penn having the roughest, giving up 6 QB pressures of his own, 2 QB sacks, and 2 QB hits. Overall, the Steelers got 22 pressures on Josh Freeman and Josh Johnson combined, 4 sacks, and 3 hits. We were only able to muster 5 pressures the entire day. No hits, no sacks. That is the one most damning piece of information that I saw out of this entire game. Now, Raheem in his press conference at noon today said that some of that was strategic. They had decided they were going to go with more coverage, more max coverage, so they gave Cody Grimm some assistance back there. And interestingly enough, if we go back to those plays that I felt were sort of the inflection points of the game, the strategy kind of worked. Our guys were in position to make those plays, and we didn't. We didn't execute on them. And subsequently, Pittsburgh ended up walking all over us on the field. So, with regards to bright spots, I thought what I saw out of Josh Freeman was pretty good. I thought he kept his head about him. I thought he continued to effort. I thought that was no more obvious than on the interception after the tip by the defensive lineman. There were only 2 people that ran that play out that I saw on film, and that's sad. And that's something that Roz got to get on those guys about. 2 people ran that play out: Josh Freeman and John Gilmore. So I liked what I saw out of Josh. Clearly it wasn't enough, but you cannot leave this kid alone, get him a huge deficit to fight back, and not give him a running game. But speaking of the running game, LeGarrette Blount certainly ran hard. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do after a bye week, get this kid to understand the playbook a little bit more, and hopefully between LeGarrette Blount and Kareem Huggins, give that offense a little bit more to work with. Greg Olsen has been hot and cold this year so far. I've never been a huge Greg Olsen fan from a play calling perspective. I don't like those naked screens he's calling. I especially don't like them against what looks like press coverage in traffic, especially when we'll have our Z receiver with a guy 17 yards off the ball who's doing nothing but going immediately into his back pedal, and we won't call a smoke screen to that person, right? But we'll call it in traffic and risk a turnover, and in fact have a turnover this week. So I didn't think it was the best play calling effort, but all in all, I think it's very tough against a team like the Steelers when you get down. A couple of people said, "How's it feel to eat that humble pie?" There's no humble pie to be eaten. No one anticipated the Bucs would be 2-1. I said we would be. I was fortunate. I'm an optimist. I look through pewter-covered colored glasses. But what I see is the formation of a nucleus here. When I hear Styles White talking on the show tonight, when I hear Coach talk at the press conference, I see players that are looking inward and not outward. They are rallying around one another and not getting mired in the fact that their town is not supporting them, either financially or emotionally. And that's okay. There's no moral or ethical obligation for the town to do either one of those things. But it's certainly not happening. When the Bucs got the chance to play the Steelers this week, only 2 things could happen. If they won, they only won because Roethlisberger wasn't there, and once again they beat a team that they should have beaten because they weren't up to standard. And if they lost, then they were exactly the sham that all of the cynics thought that they were. And that's okay, because the team does seem to be looking internally, and hopefully they'll bounce back after this bye week and put on a good show against Cincinnati, a team that has a legitimately far more potent passing offense that our defense is going to have to take care of, whether that's going to be Cody Grimm, Lynch, Savvy Piscatelli, who I know is everyone's favorite whipping boy, but to be honest, in retrospect, it does appear as though he would have done a better job, though Cody apparently graded out pretty well when they looked at the film with the exception of a couple of big plays. The defense is going to have to do a better job, not just on the field, but from a coaching and tactics perspective when faced with the Cincinnati Bengals this week. So, anyway, you guys know the stats, 38-13. There is no hiding the fact that the Steelers were the better team that day. They got the job done. Our guys had opportunities and didn't convert, and that's what makes the difference between a winner and a loser. Hopefully you guys like the video. Rate it up. Let me know what you think. We'll be back for a preview video after the bye week for the Cincinnati Bengals.